if you want to stop settling for less in life, then you have to start raising your standards. So let's explore raising your standards. I'll give you some everyday examples coming from my life of how I've raised my standards. Some are very subtle, some are more obvious. Let's look at my marriage, fatherhood, family life to start with. So let's take something like communication with my wife and kids. And really, it looks like communication on the surface, but it's really about presence. So communication. I've raised the standards with communication with both my wife and kids. And not just them, it's with everyone. But it's just that they are the ones that I'm interacting with the most. But this would be the same for friends and clients. The standards that I've set, the standards that I've raised in my communication is that when we're speaking, let's just give the example, let's say it's my wife. When we're speaking making eye contact. We're speaking in the same room as each other. We're speaking being present to the body, feeling everything that arises. We're speaking respectfully. We're speaking clearly. So these are, I think I just gave like maybe five standards. And let me show you how this is really about raising the standards, because the norm is like this, and then we've raised it, right? Most people have conversations with others without making eye contact, believe it or not. Wandering eyes, distracted, multitasking, not being present with the body, a lot of fidgeting, squirming, starting a conversation. Let's say, my wife starts a conversation with me in the kitchen as I'm doing dishes or preparing dinner, and turns her back to me, continuing the conversation, starts talking to me with her back turned as she's walking away from me and entering a different room in the home. Let's say my kids, they're talking to me, but they're fidgeting and squirming and watching TV in the background instead of making eye contact with me, staying present. So you see how these standards have raised the norm, right? The norm is not those standards. So we've raised the standards from what's considered to be norm, the normal. Speaking clearly. Sometimes my wife will be very vague, unclear in her communication, direction, or perhaps it's just telling me about something to buy from the grocery store when I'm getting groceries and it's not clear. So requiring that clarity, the standards is the clear communication. Not just clarity in the terms of the absence of confusion when speaking, but also the clarity in her voice, the clarity in my kid's voice. Sometimes my wife will say things under her breath. So there's the clarity there. If you're going to say something, say it, right? Say what you mean what you say. Same with my kids. right? If they are speaking to me, perhaps they know they did something, they crossed the line, they're in trouble, right? This kind of hiding, not wanting to be seen, again, speaking under their voice, it's this kind of suppression, right? That's no longer tolerated. So, let's say it's my 7-year-old son and he's mumbling, he's suppressing his voice. So it's speak up, say what you mean, right? Say it clearly, open your mouth, right? So you see in a lot of these examples of raising your standards that I'm going to share with you, you see that when you raise your standards, you're no longer conforming to the norm, right? The norm is this normal conditioning. And when you raise your standards, you're no longer tolerating the normal conditioning. What everyone thinks is normal and has agreed to, and you're settling for less. So no longer are you settling for less, right? When I'm with my family, I'm not settling for less presence, right? I'm not settling for what most experience at the dinner table, where they're watching TV and eating dinner, right? Sort of distraction, not being fully present with their family, right? That's this tolerating the norm. So no longer are you shrinking to fit in, right? So it's very disruptive when you raise your standards. When you raise your standards, you'll see that there's actually something that's dying, right? It's the old conditioning, the old ways of living are dying. But if you're sick and tired of settling for less, then you're ready for transformation. And that's what I'm always inviting you into, right? So what are some other examples that I can give you here? Again, staying with the family example, accountability. The standard is being accountable for your actions. The standard is commitment, following through. If you say you're going to do something, then do it. If you say you're going to show up, then show up, right? So you see, the standard in the world that you see is actually everyone is flaky, right? And people aren't really showing up. They're hiding, right? They're not committed. There's a lack of commitment. There's a lack of follow through, right? So raising the standards, setting those standards, and you set the standards by being the standard. That's why you are actually embodying the standards that you live. That's how others rise. They rise to those standards that you have set. And you set those standards by being the standard. The same accountability that I speak of with my kids, the same commitment that I speak of with my kids or with my wife, that's seen in my business. Same sort of thing, right? Where I'm 100% committed in life, 100% committed to truth. I'm all in. So that's the standard. So I don't tolerate half-heartedness. I don't tolerate anything less than all in, right? I'm not just serving those who are curious about truth. I'm serving those who are 100% committed to truth. So this commitment is reflected in my price. My price is a reflection of the commitment it takes to live truth. It's all in. It's not something to be sampled, right? It's not something for those who are curious. So that's reflected in my price, my offer. It's not for everyone. Like I said, not everyone is all in. Not everyone is 100% committed. So my offer is not for everyone. What other ways standards show up? Health. Let's just kind of zoom in terms of nutrition and the body. You see that you'll have standards for what you put in your body, right? The movement, moving the body. So have standards. The quality of nutrition that I eat. These are the standards that I've raised those standards. I like how the body performs up here instead of down here, the norm. This kind of sluggish, tired, exhausted norm that everyone lives, where they always feel like they're lacking energy. Where you see, then I've raised the standards, putting in quality nutrition, quality movement every day, and you see the body functions, performs at a higher standard, at a higher level, and that's preferred. So that's how it relates to the nutrition. The standard is my natural state, right? Unaltered by like alcohol or drugs, like weed or alcohol, mushrooms, coffee, like these things that alter the state of mind instead of the natural state of mind. I don't tolerate, I don't conform to, right? So I just prefer my natural state, the clarity, the pristine clarity, the purity, that clean, clear energy that is high energy and stable. It's not the ups and downs, the crashes that comes with, the energy drinks, the Red Bulls, the coffee. It's not this numbing, drinking alcohol. Most people, when they say they want to get high, smoking weed, don't realize that you're getting low, right? If I were to smoke weed, it feels like I'm actually getting low, not getting high, because my natural state is that natural high. What other standards here? Talked about the standards of respect, right, and communication. We're speaking respectfully, right? And if someone is speaking disrespectfully, then they're standing up with a spine, right? You're holding the line of truth. You're not picking fights. You're not passive. You're not some doormat, right? And if it requires leaving the situation, then, or the environment, I should say, then in that situation, you leave the environment. You walk away with your respect, your dignity. You walk away with honor. What other standards? Standards of my art, right? I don't lower my standards of my art. I don't try and make my art accessible to everyone, because that would compromise my authenticity. Hey, what other ways? So you see in those examples, hey guys, you see in those examples of standards, you see that actually when you raise your standards, it's always going to cost you something. It's going to cost you the way that you're currently living, the old way of living, once you make that shift, right? So there's a death and a rebirth, sort of say. It's going to cost you living a lie. It's going to cost you living below your potential, right? When you raise your standards, you are actualizing more and more of your true potential, right? So you see, what most people experience is they don't raise their standards, and there's a lot of complaining about the way things are, right? But there's the fear of the unknown. So they'd rather stay comfortable yet complaining than actually raise the standards, right? So for example, if you're raising your standards of your income, whether you are an entrepreneur and you are raising your pricing of your offers, or you're an employee and you're asking for a raise, or you are quitting that job and finding a different job or creating a different job, whatever it is, you see it's going to cost you the familiar, right? That's what's familiar, right? Take the example of the entrepreneur. It's going to cost you the clients that are comfortable with your current pricing. If you change your pricing from $100 to $500 or $500 to $5,000, you see it's going to cost you those clients who don't rise with you, right? So there's always that fear of letting go, because that's what you're letting go of, right? Remember I showed you, like, down here, here's the standards, right? Here's the norm, right? And then you raise your standards. When you raise your standards, when you rise, then you're letting go of what's considered norm. And that's how you continually, this is not just a one-time thing, you continually rise, right? That's your growth. That's your evolution. That's what allows you to experience something you've never experienced before, right? Stepping into the unknown. You can't experience something that you've never experienced before without stepping into the unknown, right? You raise your standards. And then what seemed to be your ceiling is actually now your floor, the ground, right? Something that felt out of reach then becomes your new norm. Perhaps $5,000 seemed to be such a big number, out of reach, right? But now it's then become the norm. It's become the standard, right? Your ground, your base, the foundation. So that's an example. Just like I said about the energy, right? Having the high energy, having the clear energy, right? The clear state of mind, that standard just becomes the norm. It's actually really hard to even think of what it was like before, right? And that's how we start actually getting a taste, I guess you can say, of something different, is through the contrast. If you've only eaten fast food, then it's hard to imagine, you can't imagine what it's going to feel like when you're putting in high quality nutrition in your body, right? You can't. You have to make that shift, right, to experience that contrast. And you see, it's through that contrast, you start eating a little healthier, that then it becomes obvious that you then prefer that higher standard. So then there's a letting go of the eating fast food every single day. That's the cost, right? But you see, you're not actually losing anything. because you're just simply leveling up, right? You're just losing a lower level, if you want to make it seem like that, or or speak to it like that. It's this lower level that you leave behind. And that is natural in this evolution, right? If you continue to keep growing, then you see that this journey of transformation, it's so natural. It's just over and over, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And you see this transformation that is endless, just continues and continues and continues, right? And this is how you're experiencing life, right? There's no fear, there's no stagnation. There's only stagnation when you are afraid to take that step into the unknown, right? But the way of mastery is actually living in the unknown, where this process of death and rebirth is happening so gracefully. You just see it's a natural process. It's your natural evolution. So, gave you some examples there. Communication, presence. That's very subtle in my family, marriage, and fatherhood, business, health. We spoke of pricing, so that's kind of like wealth, right? Standards of pricing, standards of income, right? Perhaps you're not having your needs met, right? Food, water, shelter, right? And now the raising the standards is you're making sure, right, that those needs are met. But it's going to require something, right? It's going to require transformation, right? Otherwise, you're living in this survival mode, right? What other examples did I give you? Art, right? Creativity, right? The standards of creativity, self-expression, right? So that's where that raising your standard about creativity could be that it's a priority to you in your life, that your creative expression is honored, respected. You're investing in it. It's seen as sacred. You're not discounting it. You're not devaluing it. Right? Like I gave you the example there of you're not conforming to sacrifice your authenticity just to be accessible. This is what all artists feel, this inner tension. They often can't name it because they aren't aware of it, right? But you see this all the time. People wanting to scale something, wanting to be available to everyone, but it costs you your authenticity. Because to be truly authentic, you're not going to be for everyone, right? That's what I say. My offer is not for everyone. I'm not for everyone, right? So I'm not going to try and fit in. I'm not going to try and pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not going to dilute my power, dim my light, water down the truth, sugarcoat the truth just to fit in, just to be accepted, just to be more accessible. No. because that's going to cost me my authenticity. So you see, that's the standard, right? I'm not conforming to that system. I'm not conforming to that normal, right? Put your heart into something and then discount it, devalue it. You see, there's a sort of feeling that you'll feel where it feels like this tension in you that arises. It's a dissonance that you feel. It's kind of this tug of war. Do I want to share this with everyone? But it kind of feels like I'm abandoning myself at the same time if I were to do that. So no longer are you abandoning yourself. No longer are you sacrificing yourself to be of service. You see that actually your greatest service is being you, being authentic. And those who you are meant to serve, they will be attracted to that authenticity. They will be attracted to the real you. So this is what I meant by I no longer serve those who are curious. I only serve those who are 100% committed. Those who are all in. I'm all in, and that's what shows up as the reflection. Someone else that's all in. Because that's what living truth costs. It's the cost of devotion. It's the cost of totality, being all in. So if you want to stop settling for less and you want to raise your standards and live the truth of you, then I invite you to join me in living truth.